When you think back to the kitchens of the 1950s, you can almost hear the soft hum of the fridge, smell Sunday roasts drifting through the house, and picture those colorful dishes placed proudly on every family table. But hidden behind the classics are the side dishes many of us have forgotten. They were bold, inventive, sometimes strange, and always made with heart. These dishes carried stories of family gatherings, church potlucks, and small-town celebrations. Today, we're bringing them back. Together, we'll revisit 25 side dishes that once defined mid-century meals, spark old memories, and maybe even inspire new ones. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you might rediscover a taste from your own past. In the 1950s, Jell-O cottage cheese salad was more than a recipe. It was a cheerful centerpiece that brought color and a sense of celebration to family tables across the country. Home cooks mixed lime or orange gelatin with cottage cheese, crushed pineapple, and whipped topping, creating a bowl that looked bright, smooth, and inviting. It appeared at potlucks, neighborhood suppers, and quiet Sunday meals because it felt fresh and hopeful in an era defined by gathering clothes. Children admired the sweetness. Adults valued how it balanced heavier dishes with its cool, creamy texture. Many people remember watching it wiggle gently on the table and feeling a small spark of delight. The memory of that simple wobble can still bring a smile today. Somewhere in those memories, a cooler dish comes into view, one filled with soft clouds of sweetness and a tropical glow that once felt almost magical. Pineapple and marshmallow ambrosia was a glowing treasure in mid-century kitchens, a dish that felt almost like a tiny holiday no matter when it appeared. Families combined canned pineapple, fluffy marshmallows, shredded coconut, and whipped cream to create something soft, sweet, and airy. It carried a dreamy charm during a time when tropical flavors felt exotic and exciting. Mothers brought it to church gatherings. Grandmothers served it during picnics where the pace was slow and conversation easy. Children reached for seconds because it tasted like dessert wrapped in the disguise of a side dish. Adults appreciated how its creamy softness lightened the meal and added a gentle sense of comfort. The glow of those flavors still lingers in memory. As that sweetness fades, a brighter green shimmer steps forward. It wobbles gently, carrying the perfume of fruit and the charm of molded creations that defined a generation. Lime gelatin salad with pears became a familiar vision in 1950s households, shimmering with a bright green hue that always drew attention. Home cooks dissolved lime gelatin, folded in tender diced pears, and finished each serving with a soft crown of whipped cream or a creamy touch of mayonnaise. Families loved how easy it was to prepare, especially during holidays when the kitchen filled with busy hands. The tartness of the lime blended smoothly with the sweet pears, creating a refreshing contrast that felt clean and cheerful on the palate. Children found the wobble amusing. Adults admired the neat slice that appeared once the mold released. It represented a moment when convenience foods symbolized innovation and pride. The glow of its color and taste still echoes faintly in the imagination. When the lime's sparkle drifts away, a quieter warmth drifts in, something smooth, pale, and comforting, once served with the kind of patience only home kitchens knew. Creamed pearl onions held a gentle, steady role on many 1950s dinner tables, especially during holidays when families gathered close around the warmth of the kitchen. Small pearl onions were simmered until tender, then wrapped in a creamy, buttery sauce that felt soft and soothing. The dish carried a natural sweetness that paired gracefully with roasted meats and hearty casseroles. Many adults remember the care required to peel each onion, a task that demanded time and intention, making the final dish feel truly cherished. Children recall the glossy look of the sauce and the comforting aroma drifting through the house. It was the kind of side that signaled a special meal without any extravagance. Even today, its memory brings a sense of calm and familiarity. As those soft onions fade into memory, a flash of orange takes their place, glazed with sweetness and shaped into perfect circles that once brightened the simplest meals. Glazed carrot rings added vivid color to the 1950s table, their bright orange slices arranged neatly like tiny edible ornaments. Cooks simmered carrots until tender, then coated them in a glossy mixture of brown sugar, butter, and a hint of citrus that created a warm, sweet shine. This dish appeared often during both weekday dinners and special gatherings because it brought cheer without requiring expensive ingredients or complicated techniques. Children enjoyed the sugary glaze. Adults valued how the gentle sweetness balanced savory mains and invited small moments of joy. The rings carried a sense of care in their perfect shape and warm glow. They reminded many families that even simple vegetables could be elevated with patience and imagination. The memory of their brightness still lingers softly today. When those golden rings glow their last, a heartier companion from the same era begins to step forward, carrying the aroma of classic American comfort. Scalloped tomatoes were a staple of frugality and flavor in 1950s kitchens. This baked dish turned day-old bread and canned tomatoes into a comforting casserole seasoned with onions, butter, and a hint of sugar. The bread soaked up the tangy juices while the top crisped beautifully in the oven. It was common at weeknight dinners, served alongside pork chops or roast beef. Housewives appreciated how it stretched a tight grocery budget. Its texture was hearty and satisfying, part pudding, part stuffing, and it carried a rustic warmth that made the whole house smell like supper. Scalloped tomatoes embodied the resourcefulness of post-war cooking, where flavor came from creativity, not excess. Though it's rarely served today, it remains a quiet icon of mid-century thrift. For many who grew up in that era, the memory of that bubbling dish on a Formica table, beside a sweating glass of milk, brings back a very specific kind of comfort. Few dishes from the 1950s spark more curiosity than banana and mayonnaise salad. Popular especially in the American South, this salad featured ripe banana halves served on a leaf of iceberg lettuce, drizzled with creamy mayonnaise, and often topped with crushed peanuts or shredded cheddar. It might seem strange now, but it was once a proudly served side dish that balanced sweet, salty, and creamy in unexpected harmony. The bananas brought softness and sugar. The mayo offered richness and tang. The lettuce provided a crisp backdrop that turned it all into something greater than its parts. It was a quick, no-cook option ideal for summer lunches or church picnics. More than that, it showed how 1950s home cooks weren't afraid to mix bold flavors in search of something new. Though it faded from fashion, it left behind stories, raised eyebrows, and the occasional smile from those who once called it a favorite. Candied sweet potato balls turned an everyday ingredient into a playful treat. Mashed sweet potatoes were seasoned with butter and spices, then shaped around mini marshmallows and rolled in crushed cornflakes, coconut, or chopped pecans. Once baked, the coating became crisp while the inside stayed tender, with a gooey marshmallow surprise at the center. This dish was especially popular during the holidays, adding a sense of fun to family meals and church potlucks. Children loved the sweet, crunchy texture. Adults appreciated the hint of tradition wrapped in something creative. It felt homemade and thoughtful, often a recipe passed down on handwritten cards tucked inside kitchen drawers. The combination of textures made it memorable, and the appearance, golden orbs glistening under a warm oven light, made it special. While it has disappeared from many tables today, the memory of that balance between comfort and whimsy still lingers for those who grew up tasting its sugary charm. The lettuce and gelatin crown salad was a dazzling product of the gelatin craze that swept through 1950s America. It combined the crisp freshness of shredded lettuce with a molded ring of flavored gelatin, usually tomato or lemon lime, and often filled the center with a savory mix of cottage cheese, olives, or seafood salad. These salads were served cold, offering a contrast of textures and temperatures that added a refreshing break to heavier main courses. More than a side, they were a visual statement crafted with precision and presented with pride. Copper molds hung proudly in kitchens, and unmolding a perfect ring was seen as a domestic achievement. Whether brought to a ladies' luncheon or a family potluck, the salad was both admired and enjoyed. It may seem curious now, but it once symbolized hospitality and flair. Today, it's a vivid reminder of a time when even side dishes were sculpted with care. Green bean casserole with fried onions was the poster child for 1950s convenience cooking. Created in a test kitchen using canned green beans, condensed cream of mushroom soup, and canned fried onions, it quickly became a national favorite. It was easy to make, inexpensive, and reliably satisfying. Families brought it to every gathering, whether it was Thanksgiving, a church supper, or a weeknight meal. Its creamy base and crunchy topping offered both comfort and texture, pleasing even picky eaters. This dish reflected the era's love affair with processed foods and time-saving recipes. Magazine ads and TV commercials championed it as modern and efficient, while home cooks embraced it for its dependable results. It became more than a recipe. It was a tradition handed down across generations, passed on handwritten cards, and whispered between sisters on phone calls. Though still seen today, its 1950s origin remains a cornerstone of America's culinary history. Frosted molded fruit salad was a dessert-like side dish that found its way onto many 1950s dinner tables. It began with a gelatin base, often strawberry or orange, filled with canned fruits like pineapple chunks, mandarin oranges, or maraschino cherries. But what made it special was the frosting, a topping of whipped cream, sometimes mixed with cream cheese or mayonnaise, that blanketed the top once the mold had set. It was served chilled, often in elaborate shapes using decorative molds that housewives displayed proudly. Sweet, tangy, and cool, it offered a refreshing contrast to hot casseroles and meat-heavy meals. Its creamy layer softened the gelatin's texture and brought a sense of indulgence to a time when desserts didn't always follow the meal. Popular at potlucks, baby showers, and church picnics, it straddled the line between salad and dessert. Though its era has passed, the memory of its pastel glow remains vivid. Corn oysters were a clever meatless dish born from economy and creativity. Despite the name, they contained no seafood, only fresh or creamed corn, eggs, flour, and seasonings fried into golden patties. The name came from their resemblance in shape and texture to fried oysters, and they offered a similar rich satisfaction without the cost. These little fritters were a fixture on supper tables in the 1950s, particularly in rural kitchens where canned and fresh corn were pantry staples. The crispy exterior gave way to a creamy, slightly sweet inside, making them an appealing side for ham, roast beef, or even as a main course on meatless Fridays. Some versions added a touch of onion or a sprinkle of cheese, but the heart of the recipe remained simple. Served hot and fresh from the skillet, they were eaten by hand or fork, often accompanied by butter or a drizzle of maple syrup. Spiced apple rings brought color and warmth to 1950s dinner plates. These vibrant red slices of apple were poached in a sweet-sour syrup infused with cinnamon, cloves, and food coloring, giving them their signature crimson hue. The apples retained their shape, but softened enough to melt in the mouth, delivering a balance of tartness and spice that complemented savory dishes like pork chops or baked ham. Housewives loved how they added brightness and flair without much effort. Their glossy, jewel-toned appearance made them a favorite on holiday tables, especially when carefully arranged around roast or placed atop a bed of lettuce. Though considered a side dish, they often blurred into dessert territory with their sweet profile. Cooked on the stovetop and served cold or warm, spiced apple rings became a hallmark of thoughtful presentation. Today, they're rarely made, but their festive charm and comforting flavor remain a fond memory for many. In the health-conscious corners of the 1950s dining room, cottage cheese and pineapple ring stood tall, literally. Using a ring mold, home cooks combined cottage cheese with crushed pineapple, gelatin, and whipped topping or mayonnaise to form a creamy, sweet, savory mold. It was chilled until firm and often unmolded onto a bed of lettuce or surrounded by sliced fruit. This dish walked the line between a salad and a protein-packed side and was particularly favored at women's luncheons, church gatherings, and summer suppers. It was refreshing, light, and felt modern at the time, part of the post-war trend toward easier, cooler meals with a touch of flair. The texture was smooth and slightly tangy, with bursts of pineapple throughout. While not as visually dramatic as other gelatin dishes, it had quiet charm and a wholesome feel. Today, it's often forgotten, but its clean, gentle flavor once made it a regular guest on 1950s tables. Harvard beets were a sweet and sour staple that brought bold flavor and vibrant color to the plate. Sliced beets were simmered in a glossy sauce made from sugar, vinegar, butter, and a bit of cornstarch for thickness. The result was tender, jewel-toned rounds coated in a tangy glaze that clung to every bite. Though their exact origin predates the 1950s, this dish was especially popular during the mid-century when canned vegetables became kitchen mainstays. Housewives appreciated how easily they could transform a humble can of beets into something elegant and flavorful. The dish often accompanied roasted meats or appeared at holiday spreads, its vivid red standing out among casseroles and breads. Some recipes added a touch of clove or onion for extra depth. Harvard beets represented the era's love for balance, sweet, sharp, and richly hued. Though they've fallen out of favor, their unforgettable color and punchy taste remain a flavorful piece of food history. A crisp and elegant offering, Celery Victor brought a touch of sophistication to the 1950s American table. Originating from San Francisco decades earlier, it became a favorite among hostesses who wanted to serve something chilled, refreshing, and different. Whole celery stalks were blanched until just tender, then marinated in a tangy broth of vinegar, lemon juice, and spices before being chilled and served. Sometimes garnished with pimentos or parsley, the result was both simple and refined. It stood apart from heavy casseroles and creamy salads, offering a palate-cleansing bite that felt almost European in its restraint. Served in glass bowls or on lettuce leaves, it had a quiet charm that reflected a time when even vegetables had their moment to shine. You can almost picture it now, arranged just so in a scalloped glass dish, glistening with marinade and waiting patiently for compliments that always came. Creamed chipped beef on toast points was a creamy, salty classic that filled 1950s kitchens with the scent of butter, toast, and something deeply familiar. Thin ribbons of dried beef were stirred into a velvety white sauce, then spooned generously over neatly cut toast triangles. Soft underneath, crisp at the edge. Though it had humble roots as military fare, it was welcomed into civilian homes where its comfort mattered more than its origin. The toast points gave it a polished look, transforming what might have been called rations into something that felt warm and respectable. Housewives leaned on it during tight weeks or hurried mornings. Children came to expect it on chilly weekends. Somewhere, there's still an enamel saucepan stained with cream and a stovetop memory waiting to be stirred. Just as someone once did, apron on, spoon in hand, thinking of nothing but feeding the family. With its coral hue and sculpted shape, molded shrimp salad captured the theatrical spirit of mid-century American dining. It blended chopped shrimp, celery, green peppers, and seasonings into a lemon or tomato gelatin base, often lightened with a bit of mayonnaise. Chilled in ornate copper molds, then unmolded with a dramatic flourish, it glistened on platters surrounded by lettuce leaves and crackers. This wasn't just a side, it was performance. Shrimp, still considered a treat by many, gave it an air of occasion, even if the ingredients came from cans and freezers. It belonged at ladies' luncheons, bridal showers, and buffet tables with silver tongs. It jiggled into the room like a guest that knew it would be talked about, whether adored or politely avoided. And in that moment, it was impossible to ignore. Mashed potato ring with peas brought structure to comfort. Cooked potatoes were whipped until smooth, shaped into a ring mold, and baked just enough to hold their golden form. Into the center went peas, sometimes creamed, sometimes buttered, creating a bright contrast of color and texture. It wasn't just about taste. It was about, presentation, a touch of theater brought to the dinner table by clever home cooks who wanted their meals to feel a little more special. This dish appeared at church potlucks and family feasts, offering familiarity dressed in something a bit more polished. It didn't just sit on the table, it posed there, proudly, like it knew it had dressed for the occasion, and it always earned a nod of approval before the first spoon ever dipped in. Tomato aspic was one of the boldest and most debated side dishes of the 1950s. Made from tomato juice spiced with vinegar, celery, and onion, thickened with unflavored gelatin, it was poured into ring molds and left to chill into a firm, quivering jewel of acidity. Some versions added chopped vegetables or olives. Others paired it with a scoop of cottage cheese or deviled eggs. It offered a bright, sharp contrast to creamy or rich dishes, and its color made it stand out instantly on any buffet. Though its texture puzzled some, it had a loyal following among home entertainers who valued its striking look and retro charm. Even now, its bright wobble feels like a dare, a test of memory, taste, and mid-century pride, served with confidence on a leaf of iceberg and a polished silver spoon. Shredded carrot and raisin slaw offered a cool, creamy contrast on many 1950s tables. Grated carrots were mixed with plump raisins, crushed pineapple, and a tangy sweet dressing made from mayonnaise or sour cream. Some versions added chopped apples or walnuts, but the heart of the dish remained light, crisp, and just a little sweet. It was a go-to for weeknight meals and backyard picnics, served chilled in pastel bowls with snap-on lids. This slaw didn't compete for attention. It simply belonged tucked between the meatloaf and the rolls without fuss. It came together in minutes and held up in the fridge for days, which made it practical, but the flavor brought people back. When someone reached for seconds, they usually didn't say much. You just noticed an empty spot on the plate where something bright and familiar had been a moment ago. Pickled peach halves added color and boldness to the plate in a way few other sides did. Cling peach halves, usually from a can, were gently simmered in vinegar, cinnamon, sugar, and cloves until they soaked up the warm, spiced brine. Once cooled, they were served cold beside pork roasts or baked hams, their sharp sweetness lifting every bite. Housewives appreciated how easy they were to prepare in advance. A cherry in the center made them feel festive. The syrup left behind in the bowl was often drizzled over other sides without much thought. In dining rooms filled with casseroles and cream, these bright little fruits cut through the noise. Guests remembered the flavor, but they also remembered the shine. It caught the light differently than anything else on the table, especially when placed in a shallow glass dish that made it look like dessert, pretending not to be. Baked pineapple casserole leaned into contrast. Pineapple chunks were mixed with sugar, flour, sharp cheddar cheese, and topped with buttery cracker crumbs before baking. The scent was rich and unexpected. The pineapple gave bursts of sweetness. The cheese added depth. Housewives often paired it with ham, but it could show up beside roast chicken or on its own, warming in the oven until guests arrived. It raised eyebrows from newcomers, but only once. After one bite, it stayed in the rotation. It wasn't a dessert, though many treated it like one. The top browned just enough to give crunch, and the filling held a soft pull from the syrup and cheese blending together. What made it memorable wasn't just the taste. It was the way people paused after the first spoonful, a little surprised, not quite sure how to describe what they were enjoying. Creamed spinach with nutmeg brought warmth to a part of the plate usually reserved for obligation. Spinach was steamed or wilted, then stirred into a thick white sauce flavored with butter, salt, and just the faintest touch of nutmeg. That final note softened the bitterness and gave the dish a kind of quiet depth. It didn't demand much attention. It was soft, pale, and mild, but it brought balance to meats, breads, and heavier sides. Housewives relied on it for Sunday roasts and weeknight suppers alike. It was smooth on the tongue and comforting on colder days. Many children didn't love it, but grew to understand its place. When done right, it was spooned from a warm bowl without a second thought. Sometimes it was served in silence. Other times, someone would nod and say it tasted exactly the way they remembered it from their mother's table. Stuffed prunes with bacon were a small surprise on crowded plates. Pitted prunes were filled with almonds or cream cheese, then wrapped in strips of bacon and baked until crisp. The sugar in the fruit began to caramelize, and the bacon pulled tight around the center. At cocktail parties, they were offered on toothpicks. At home, they were tucked beside roasts and deviled eggs. The flavor was bold, rich, and a little smoky. It didn't fit any single category, but it stood out just the same. Hosts liked how quickly they disappeared from the tray. Guests usually asked what they had just eaten, and then quietly reached for another. This wasn't a dish people made every week, but they remembered when it showed up. You could tell from the way they paused after biting into one, like a forgotten detail had just returned to them without warning. These 25 forgotten side dishes from the 1950s fed more than hunger. They shaped moments, built memories, and filled kitchens with life. The flavors may fade, but the spirit behind them still lingers. Up next, we uncover 30 forgotten cooking tricks from the 1950s that shaped how an entire generation made magic in the kitchen.